What's up, everyone? Jason Gilbo here with Chris Etherington, breaking down the Travelers Championship for this week. Fresh off the U.S. Open, which was just absolutely insane because we had a ton of big names drop out basically and get cut, which it's always fun if you're kind of off those guys. But obviously, if you're on the other side of it, it's not a fun week.
Yeah, it was just one of those weeks where it was just brutal to watch, especially for the first 2 days. I mean, if you only had Spieth at the top, you were laughing because everyone else around him basically just missed the cut. You had Day and McIlroy just shitting the bed after the first round, and they couldn't get anything going on Friday. And they weren't the only ones. There was just complete carnage, basically. There was only 1% that had 6 of 6 through for the weekend in the Millionaire Maker contest. So it was just one of those weeks, and yeah, now we're on to this week.
Yeah, and I hopped in, the Google Hangout here, and I just took kind of a deep sigh because that's how all of us feel after like a big major, and then coming back and trying figuring out what these guys want to do. It's such a letdown to come off, especially these bigger names that didn't do well, to go off and kind of struggle with the U.S. and Open, and then go play a lesser tournament the next week.
Yeah, it just seems a little odd for especially Jason Day and McIlroy to play this week, especially not playing so well at the U.S. Open. But, I mean, those two guys at the top, they're basically the perfect tournament option because everyone is going to be on Spieth and Thomas because they saw him play on the weekend. Thomas with a chance to win at the beginning of Sunday. So take it as it may for this week. But for me, I'm on the fence of just fading the top 4 guys and just start my lineups with Paul Casey.
Yeah, Paul Casey, in his last 6 starts, he's been really solid. He's a guy who just kind of falls below that 10K range. And he's kind of, for the most part, I feel like he's been overlooked most part of the year, and then people are starting to catch on a little bit more of late.
Yeah, it was like his last 6 starts this season. He finished inside the top 30 in all 6. So he's definitely getting into form. He was up there for a bit last week, but he just sort of faltered off a little bit. But when you look at his stats, he's one of the best in the field. He's 41st in birdie or better, 28th in proximity, 5th in GIR. So, again, he's one of those guys, if he can make a putt here and there, he's going to be up there for Sunday.
Yeah, and once again, not really going to cost you a ton. This is definitely one of those ones where, there's a lot of guys that kind of fall between the 9K range and the 8K range, and then a little bit into the 7s where you're kind of going with that balanced approach.
Yeah, there's a lot of intriguing players in this range between 8 and 9, basically. There's a handful of guys that will be perfect for cash, and there's other guys that will be perfect for tournaments. For me, I think Brendan Steele is the perfect cash play option at 9,000. His stats, just like Casey, is one of the best. He's 14th birdie or better for this week. He's 34th for proximity, 42nd for GIR. And then when you look at his course history, it's, again, one of the best in the field. He only missed 1 cut going back in 2012, but after that, he has a top 5 finish in 2014. So when you look at that, and for a guy at 9,000, I think just pairing him up with Paul Casey and just start from there and just pick and choose the guys that you like in this range.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't mind this 9K range at all. I like Brent Snedeker, 9,400. This guy's played really well this year. Tied for 9th at the U.S. Open. He's had 5 top 10s. I was telling you, he's actually shown off some reasonable upside. I feel like even more so than some of these other guys in this range, and at a more consistent rate.
Yeah, it definitely looks like his injury scare has gone away. He was injured a little bit. I think it was around his hip area earlier around the Masters, I want to say. But it does look like he has that healed up and he's playing a little bit better with a top 10 finish last week. And with his course history, he's made his last 3 cuts here. 2 of them very recently finishing inside top 15. So with Snedeker there, be above Leishman and Steele, I think Snedeker might be a perfect tournament option for this week.
Yep, definitely. And then speaking of tournament option, I mean, Daniel Berger is always such a boomer bust play. Saw him struggle at the U.S. Open. Obviously, won St. Jude before that. I mean, that's just really his range of outcomes. I mean, he's just that guy who he's either on or he's just completely off.
Yep, and also when you look at his course history, he finished 5th last year. So with that in mind, and with looking at his stats for this week, he's actually pretty good making birdies. He's 17th in birdie or better percentage. He's actually 31st in par 4 scoring for this week. So with him being sandwiched between Steele and Leishman, I think him and Snedeker are the perfect tournament options for this week.
And then going a little bit lower into the 8K range, Brian Harman, I mean, kind of out of nowhere, played really well. I guess not out of nowhere. He had a nice top 10 at the Dean DeLuca, but, I was not expecting to see him up within top 3.
No, and most of us didn't really look at him at all last week. I mean, his stats are okay. He's 15th in par 4 scoring. He's 27th at birdie or better. But with his recent performance, I mean, yeah, he had that one top 10, but outside of that, I mean, no one was looking at him. And with a new course for the U.S. Open, it kind of makes sense that he was up there because it was going to happen that way where there'll be a few names that no one recognized. That'll be up on the leaderboard on Sunday. But, I mean, when you look at his course history, he's only missed 1 cut, and that was last year. And the year before that, he finished 3rd. So I think Harman is going to be a little bit popular, especially just recently watching him play and also looking at his course history. Him and Steele, I think, will be one of the most popular plays in this range.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that as well. A lot of options here. I mean, Tony Finau's a good spot, 8,700. Kyle Stanley, 8,600. I know you wrote him up. Kyle Stanley's definitely been a nice stud. I mean, usually he's a little bit more, a lot cheaper than what we have him at here. But I think considering how well he's played, just the tournament being, or the field being a little bit narrowed down, they priced him up a little bit. Right,
and I think Stanley might be. He could be either cash or tournament options, either way, basically, for this week. For this year, like you said, he's been really on form. He only missed 1 cut in his last 6 weeks here. He finished 4th at the Players. So if you just look at that and then look at his stats, I mean, he's 3rd in proximity. He's 2nd in GIR. Usually there's those 2, you're basically thinking maybe playing him a cash, but then if you look at his course history, is not all that solid for his history here. His best finish was a 20th place finish back in 2015. So maybe with that, he might be just a nice tournament option for this week.
Yeah, definitely with you. Anyone else interested in this range? I mean, we were joking around Jim Furyk before, 8,500. Made the cut at the U.S. Open. Had a good laugh about that.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the next 2 guys on the list is basically what to do with them. For Jim Furyk, I mean, this is the historic site where he shot the 58 last year. He's the only professional on the PGA Tour that has done that. And he's made his first cut this season from the looks of it. at the U.S. Open last week. And I mean, if you look at that, obviously because of his form, his stats are not that good. But be that as it may, I think maybe put him in one lineup in a tournament is not a bad idea. And then the other guy is Bubba Watson. I mean, he's basically your course horse for this week. He hasn't missed a cut in his last 6 years. He's won here in 2015. And, I mean, this year he's finished 6th at the Memorial, but obviously he was one of the bigger names that missed the cut last week at the U.S. Open. But those two guys, I think putting them in one lineup in a tournament is a good way to go for this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not something to overlook. I mean, it's definitely just because of their recent play this year. If they were playing better, I think we'd be taking them into heavier consideration. But because the course history still got so solid, I mean, it's at least worth to take a look.
Exactly, especially when last year we were used to playing Bubba at like $1,000, $1,500 more expensive than what it is now. I don't know what it is with him this year, but yeah, if you just look at course history, go ahead and play him. I'm on the fence on maybe just playing him in one lineup in a tournament, and that's it for me.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely with you. Guy I like in this range, 7,900, David Lingmerth. He's made his last 5 cuts. He did struggle with the Players, ended up withdrawing the 4th round, but I don't mind him here. This is a guy who's been pretty consistent this year, pretty average in basically all scoring. So, at that range, I don't love like a lot of the options like, Summer Hayes is there, Chad Campbell, Russell Knox. None of those guys are really jumping off the page at me.
Yeah, and I think those guys, a lot of DFS players will recognize those names more than Lingmerth. I think for Lingmerth, recently it looks like he's been popping a little bit on the leaderboard, especially at the beginning of the tournament. But I mean, if you look at his last 3 starts, 21st last week, and then a 15th and a 12th, and I think playing the ownership angle, I think choosing him over, say, a Russell Knox or a Streelman will be a good play for this week.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of looking at, just more of a leverage play against those guys who will draw probably a little bit lower or a little bit higher ownership.
Yeah, and if you go down a little bit further, I mean, everyone's going to be on Bluff Mark and also Sander. They saw Sander play on the weekend. He had a top 5 finish with Fowler and Bill Haas. So at 7,600, I think Sander is going to be one of the more popular plays just because everyone who played last week saw him up there on Sunday, and they're just going to pick him because he's basically cheap and he's affordable. And I think he's just an auto fade for me for both cash and tournaments.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think some of these names, I mean, we talked about a few earlier that, because they played so well, because it just seemed like it was once in a blue moon that you got a couple good rounds out of them, it might bump their ownership up a little bit more. And that's kind of where you make the pivots at.
Right. And you just kind of have to do your own research and just try and pick and choose on who you think is going to be more popular in this range, and just take the leverage guy, and hopefully the more popular guy will miss the cut, and that way you have the leverage over the field in a GPP, and that might help you win that week.
Then looking lower, I mean, below 7,500, there's a couple, names, Charlie Hoffman, Keegan Bradley, Martin Laird, some names that will stand out to people. But I know you're looking at Emiliano Grillo there, 7,200. This is another guy who's been pretty consistent this year.
Yeah, obviously no course history for him, but with his stats, I mean, he's solid all around. He's 45th in birdie or better, 70th in proximity, 59th in GIR. Yeah, he missed a cut at the U.S. Open, but I'm not going to take that into consideration. It was the U.S. Open. It was the major, and a lot of popular guys missed a cut. So outside of that, he's made his last three basically, including 11th place finish at the Players. So with that in mind, I think he's a fine cash play or tournaments for this week.
Anyone else you're on down here? Maybe a Will McGirt, something like that. We were talking about JT Poston. We're off the wagon now.
Yeah, JT Poston is definitely falling off a little bit. But the one guy I need to mention, he's a little sour taste in my mouth after yesterday. But Keegan Bradley, I mean, his stats are solid enough where you should consider him. The only reason I'm mentioning him is because if you had watched the future coverage or the feature group coverage yesterday with him and Spieth, it was mentioned that Keegan and his wife are expecting. So basically, take that as it may. He's going to be the father for the first time in 9 months from now. So maybe put him in a lineup, at least one lineup, and that for the rest of the year, maybe, because you never know, it might happen. It seems to be more often than not for these guys, if they find out if they're going to be the father, then they just play well for some reason that following week or the next month or something like that. So I don't know, maybe just put it in one lineup if you're playing multi-entry tournaments. Outside of that, maybe don't touch him in cash. He's just too volatile.
Yeah, we can definitely play the baby narrative. I mean, as you said, there's a decent history of baby narratives paying off.
Exactly. I mean, you had, outside of Kevin Na being a father for the first time this year, outside of him, I think more times than not, most guys that find out that they're going to be a father, like I said, either win or just play very well for the next couple of weeks or a month, basically. Whether that's just because they're very happy or because, oh crap, I'm going to be a father, I need to make some actual money now. Who knows, right? So yeah, take it as it may with Bradley, but I think for me, I'm just going to have him in one lineup for the next few months and see what happens.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those ones, as you said, you got 9 months here to span it out. We play them over the next few tournaments, and then you take a long, long break until the baby's actually born.
Exactly.
Yeah, you and I were talking with JT Poston, and we kind of noticed the trend here with some of these guys who are really young and rookies, in fact, who have just kind of started to fall off a little bit because, you know, they tend to play more and more over some of the other guys who are only playing 8, 9 tournaments compared to 13, 14, 15. And we're starting to see the trend where guys like that, we noticed it with Adam Hadwin as well, who are kind of faltering off here.
Yeah, it seems like this is going to be the start to just look at the rookies or the young players that are trending downward, as it were. With Poston and Hadwin, they're like, Poston missed his last 2 cuts. He actually missed his last 3 out of 4 cuts. So with that, I mean, something is wrong with him, I guess. Maybe he's just playing way too much. Same with Hadwin. I mean, if you look at Hadwin's performance, he's barely making a cut, if not missing a cut. And then his stats are actually falling down just slightly, where he's just being average, maybe just below average for the field. But just be mindful from this week onward with the rookies. They might be getting a little too tired for the season because most of them have played more than 20 times already, which is a lot. But yeah, just be mindful and just pick and choose which ones you like.
Yeah, definitely. So, anyone else you want to talk about?
No, I mean, there's a couple guys I like down here below 7. Simpson and Erich English. Both of those guys with their stats, I mean, nothing to basically roll over. Simpson's 6th in proximity for English. I mean, his best stat is 37th for strokes gain around the green. So he's also made his last 3 cuts. Same with Simpson, with them being at 6,900. That's all you're looking for this week is guys down here that are consistent of making cuts. And yeah, that's basically it for me.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. If you want to check out Chris' article, you can head over to DaveFantasyCafe.com. He was one of those 1% guys who made all 6 of 6 through, but no Kepka, man.
Yeah, I didn't have Kepka. I had Fowler and Hawes, and then Keegan Bradley was
Hey,
my
1% though, so much better than everyone else.
Exactly.
So that's gonna wrap things up here. You can head over to DaveFantasyCafe.com, check out our great tools and content.